without further ado, Brooks Agnew, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Kerry. It's good to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. I've had you on, I guess it was a live stream, and I think I had you on my show quite some time ago, maybe a couple of years ago or something.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of years ago.
It's just amazing. Time just flies. So what I've done here is I have corrected the guest bio with the new one that you wanted me to put up there. I'm not sure that that tells a whole lot about you, though, what the page you've got going. I guess it's a kind of more of an advertisement for your new book, which you can definitely talk about. But I think the first matter of business would be talking about your own background, who you are, what you bring to the table from the past.
Sure. I am a commercial scientist and engineer. I've been working in automotive industry for 25 years. Other industries like chemical production. I've built a biodiesel plant and also a polymer production plant for W.R. Grace, which is one of the largest corporations in the world. And I've written 6 books now. 2 of them have been in the top 10. One was #1 last week. That's a good accomplishment. I've been a college professor teaching mathematics at on the college university level, and other than that, raised 4 kids, and I've had a blast building businesses and helping manufacturing organizations improve their efficiencies.
Okay, but you also have some hands-on dealings with HAARP, isn't that true?
Yes, in the 80s, I did research for ground probing radar and published some papers in the late 80s. And about the same time, Bernard Eastland was working on developing HAARP for the Navy. And Dr. Nick Begich read my papers in the mid-90s and contacted me in 1996 about helping him produce a film on HAARP called Holes in Heaven. Paula Randall Smith was the producer. Wendy Robbins was the director. In 1997, it was finished. It came out, and I don't know, and all of the conference events out there, Holes in Heaven is still one of the top-selling videos out there about HAARP. So I'm really pleased with how the message has gotten out there. But my papers had to do with ground probing radar and how I may have accidentally caused an earthquake while I was in Oregon with it. I became concerned because Nick Begich shared with me the frequencies that they were using to heat up the ionosphere, and I wrote an opinion paper which was called a solar tap, or an ionospheric breakdown, which was a catastrophic downside to mishandling HAARP and causing the ionosphere to discharge into the earth like a giant lightning bolt. So it caused quite a bit of civilian oversight to occur on HAARP, and it didn't stop them from building them, though. They've built 3 more. Now the latest one is in Antarctica, and they now have a network of them around the planet, and we're still concerned that pouring that much energy and all at once in different points in the ionosphere could cause an ionospheric breakdown, and it would be cataclysmic. It would be like getting Earth being hit by a comet.
Okay, well, yes, and absolutely, I would say. Sorry about that. I am sort of wondering, just in terms of an update, with what's going on around the globe, because other countries have HAARP, and you seem to have a definite position on the matter. Where do you stand in regard to things like Fukushima being triggered by HAARP?
I don't think Fukushima was triggered by HAARP. My team did my own investigation. We found that there was no HAARP signature at the time that the Fukushima quake happened or the explosions at the nuclear power plants. Reactor number 4 exploded. We all watched it on TV together. It was offline for a year, did not have a containment around it, and had no fuel in it, and yet it still mysteriously exploded. As it turns out, we traced that to an Israeli company that planted cameras at Fukushima, which were built in Dimona, Israel, and were actually remote nukes, small nukes that went off that actually blew the containment apart. There is no possible way, and I have a degree in nuclear chemistry, so I know what I'm talking about. There is no possible way hydrogen can generate enough explosive force to crack 15 feet of reinforced concrete like that. It had to be a high-velocity explosive device placed in a specific location to make those containments break like that. We also measured the earthquake, and it was a 5.9 on the Richter scale. I watched the film of it happening inside an office. I've been in lots of earthquakes, very typical for a 6.0. The tsunami was not triggered by the quake. It was triggered by other devices that were placed in the trench offshore and were set to go off with a quake so that it would use the quake as a cover. The reason these reactors were taken out is because Japan had signed an agreement to enrich uranium for Iran, and so the Israelis took out the reactors.
Okay, and that all coincides very nicely with my interviews with Jim Stone, and I wonder if you know who he is.
I do. In fact, we corroborated on that event, and Jim Stone was my source. I wasn't going to give it up unless you mentioned it.
Oh, yeah, I did. In fact, I did an interview with him on my show as well as a live stream event. He is, I don't know, maybe you kept touch with him, but he was, last time I talked to him, on the run in Mexico looking for asylum outside the United States.
Yep. My other source also stopped doing what he was doing, and he's not on the run, but he's definitely changed his tune, and he is watching over his shoulder.
Right. Well, it's great to get your corroboration on all of that, and I know that will mean a lot to people that are listening. That does also substantiate other sort of whistleblower information that I have gotten from other sources, completely other sources. So we're really talking about quite a plot. The Iran situation and uranium. I believe that that's part of the story. I'm not sure it's the whole story in regard to Fukushima, because my understanding is Fukushima is kind of it's like the gift that keeps on giving, or whatever they call it. In other words, this situation is an ongoing disaster, and we still have other things to look forward to, like I think it's reactor 4 melting down, so on and so forth.
Well, the comment by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is that the emissions are very low. They're, 100 times below what's considered dangerous. And yes, that's true. But chronic exposure to high levels or higher levels, elevated levels of these types of isotopes, cesium and other isotopes of what they were using in those reactors, is more dangerous to the human race than an acute exposure. In other words, the bomb at Hiroshima and Nagasaki was not as damaging to the world as a chronic exposure of low-level scintillations that come from this kind of radiation. So and there are several sites out there that have now cloned this engine, because the original source of the engine was taken down as soon as it got out, that's mapping the ion cloud that continuously is pushed around by the jet stream from Fukushima. And they're taking samples state by state, county by county, community by community in some instances, and they're finding these isotopes. We know exactly that they came from Fukushima, and they're now being tracked all the way across Canada and into northern United States. Okay.
So also the Gulf situation, did you have a position in regard to what caused that?
Well, one thing we know for sure, and I was in Mississippi when it occurred. I went to the beach. I took my own samples. I went out on boats. I looked at what was going on, and the spill was actually not that bad. I mean, it made a mess, but nature has a way of cleaning that kind of mess up. The real danger was from the chemicals that they were putting on the water to break the slick up, to break up the bad press. We could not get an MSDS, a material safety data sheet, on what they were putting on the water. They claimed it was a proprietary formula. People in Tampa were being made sick by the cloud that was blowing over there. This isn't from the oil. I mean, I've lived around oil fields as I was developing ground probing radar for years. Oil does not affect you that way. Those chemicals do. So we know that it was a disaster, but we also know absolutely, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that it was not an accident. Too much money moved in precise ways from insurance companies, from spill management companies, from stockholders, from venture funds that had that particular rig funded, moving within hours, weeks, and days before this event occurred. It was a disaster, but I'm stating unequivocally it was no accident.
Okay, and what about the idea that it was hit from above by a pulse weapon or electromagnetic pulse of some kind? Had you heard that? There was a beam that was photographed?
No, I haven't heard that. I didn't know that. I lived 60 miles from the coast when that occurred off the Gulf, and I didn't hear that.
Okay. Yeah, a couple people have reported it as being a beam that was actually, I guess, photographed, and that it hit the platform and that exploded afterward. The people somehow...
There are 27,000 oil rigs out there. It would have to be pretty focused to hit the most modern, well-funded rig in the world.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But this is the kind of thing that they can do. Okay, well, that's very interesting. What about the fissures that were happening under, in the ground below the rig? Did you get a report on that? Because I did get some information there, and they were well warned. At least the word out on the, around the rig and with people that were working jobs related to the rig. I got a special whistleblower testimony in that regard, which basically said that they had reported up the chain that the ground fissures were ready to blow and the pressure was building, and they all knew ahead of time.
I didn't hear that either. So you have better sources than you. I didn't hear that.
Okay, well, it all leads to the same place, and what we've got are two major disasters kind of within a certain period of time that are definitely caused. And Stuxnet, I don't know, is your position on Stuxnet, I think that it is being used as a sort of a nuclear blackmail tool against governments to get them to do what perhaps Israel would like them to do?
Well, that sounds interesting. My original source on Stuxnet was that it was a piece of software that was developed by Israel, and it was intentionally placed into the Iranian enrichment system. Its specific purpose is to disrupt the operation of cooling valves. A lot of reactors don't have water pumps per se that run on electricity or gasoline or diesel. They run on steam. They actually run on the steam from the reactor. Just in case they have a giant power failure, these pumps can turn on and pump seawater or lake water into the reactor and keep it from melting down, unlike Chernobyl. Stuxnet messes with the software that operates the valves. The pumps are perfectly good. The pipes are good. The water's sitting there, but it won't pump because the valves will not operate. And the software played such havoc with the Iranians that they could not trust their own equipment. They would try to run tests, and the tests wouldn't work, and people would get fired, and heads would roll, so to speak, and nobody could figure out what was going on. It wasn't until somebody in the White House leaked that the Stuxnet virus was out there that they even knew they had a virus. And then about 3 weeks ago, someone in the White House leaked that the United States was involved in writing the Stuxnet virus. which the Israelis came up a few hours later and said, that's a lie. We wrote the virus. You had nothing to do with it. You're taking credit for something you didn't do. So I am blown away at whoever high up in this government is leaking secrets like that, because this is the highest level of industrial espionage ever attempted by one nation against another.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, this is, if you understand or sort of go down that road where Israel did create Stuxnet, but my understanding is that it had help from some, code writers U.S. code writers, and regardless of what that information was that you got, and then you have to look at that scenario and look at the, what happened in Japan, and I can't reveal a certain amount of information that I have about the backstory here, but I can tell you that at the highest levels of the Japanese government, that they became very, very interested in what you and Jim Stone discovered. And I know it sounds like, why would they need you guys? I mean, they must have their own insiders and so on and so forth. But believe it or not, this is what we heard.
Good. Then we did our job, because I buy parts from Japan for my factories, and I could not get parts that I need because they were manufactured in the dead zone. So we had to resource a different part from a different part of Japan, and it was an interruption for us, and it was for many companies.
Well, anyway, I think that story is still ongoing, unfortunately, and I feel for the Japanese people and for the beautiful, wonderful country that they have, because in many ways, from what I understand, it's it's really poisoned at this point.
Well, I visited that plant in 2002, right after 9/11. And I found it to be a fascinating plant. Now, they had, not issues, but they had the normal issues with any nuclear power plant. They have issues with quakes and containment, and they had a really great fail-safe, which is a 12-inch thick polished stainless steel pipe that's directly underneath the reactors at an angle. And this pipe the wall is 12 inches thick, and it's angled to the sea, so that if the reactor melts down, and this is called a pellet reactor, it has like really small BBs, it's not rods or big chunks of reactant, it's pellets. Then these pellets melt through the reactor, they hit this tube, and they head for the ocean. And this is a really deep ocean. It's like 10,000 feet deep there. But the tube, the stainless steel tube, will actually melt, and they calculated the melt rate of the wall of the steel of this pipe, so that the pellets would make it all the way to the ocean without completely melting through that 12-inch thick steel wall. The pellets never made it to the wall. That's how well they contained it, regardless of what everybody's saying. The problem is that the actual containment, 15 feet of reinforced concrete, ruptured. That doesn't happen from hydrogen.
Wow. Okay. Well, you seem to have a great deal of clarity. Your background lends itself to that kind of clarity, I guess, on this situation. Strangely, I haven't heard you out there on the circuit talking about all of this. Have you done so?
No, I have a real job. I come on, programs like this, and I've only done it on X Squared Radio, my program, and yours, and that's it. I have not shared this information out there anywhere. I don't want to put crosshairs on my back either.
I see. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't want to bring the heat down on you, but I got to say, you have just because of your background, it lends a lot of credence, and I appreciate that, and I'm sure that Jim Stone would appreciate that as well. And many other people that, obviously. The truth is always really, really great to hear, and especially when it comes with a certain background that matches the level of the information coming out. It just lends credence. Okay, well, let's change gears a bit here. I want to get an update from you on the North Pole Inner Earth expedition, because I haven't heard anything about where you've gone with that since then. And is that off the charts, or is that still something you're planning on?
Last Wednesday, we made a global announcement on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie that the expedition has been funded. We have a Park Avenue film production company from New York that has put up the money for the expedition. They have the rights to the film. Of course, we have irrevocable rights of advice, and they're going to follow our game plan and our business plan. But it's now fully funded, and the ship is going to be chartered next month, and we are taking off for Murmansk, Russia in July of 2013. So the 100-man team will be chosen later on this fall, probably by Christmas. The 25 alternates, because, by next summer, some of those people will fall out. Illness, death, bankruptcy, whatever. No fly list.
Okay.
Then we have to get those 100 people from the 5 universities and other support organizations from around the world to the boat, and then 15 days on the sea, and then getting everybody home safe. So it is quite the venture. It takes a long time and a lot of money to put something like this together. It is going to be awesome.
Oh, wow. Well, that is, I'm so happy that you've got like a professional film crew. That's very, very exciting to hear. I'm just curious. I talked to Valery Uvarov. For some reason, he seemed to know about your expedition, and this was years ago when we interviewed him in Russia. Do you know who he is?
He either works for the Murmansk shipping company or he works for one of the charter companies. Now, my contact was Max Chernevsky. And there are 2 charter companies that operate the what are called the ice-rated hulls that Russia operates. And I think Valerie is in that group.
This is Kerry Cassidy. I love that clapping. It's just so fun. Anyway, Brooks, it's great to hear about this expedition. And as we were just kind of talking about Valery Uvarov, who I interviewed a few years ago in Russia, and just was exchanging some anecdotal information about him. So are you saying that you know him, or you've just heard his name?
I've just heard his name. When we deal with these ships, these are former Soviet ships, both of them. They are run by the Murmansk Shipping Company, which is really the Russian government. So when the charter company came to us and offered a joint venture, because they really, really want to do this expedition, they don't know where to go. We're going to cover 10,000 square miles when we go, and we've got 5 universities, as I said, their teams gearing up to go. They've already written their papers. Now they're putting their grad student teams together to actually go get seasick for 15 days. They really want to do this. It's exciting to them. They love the film. They love the idea. They love that it's as hard science as it comes, even though this is a very woo-woo subject. And, we're going to do our best to prove or disprove that there is an opening above the Arctic Circle into the Earth.
Okay, so if you find the opening, I can't believe you're saying it's 15 days, because what if you find an opening and you try to enter? Are you just not going to go in?
Correct. We are not going to take a 450-long nuclear-powered icebreaker inside the Earth. But there is a helicopter on the ship, and there's another boat on the ship. And we have Jill Heinerth coming, who is a veteran under-ice diver and photographer for National Geographic. She's coming. So we're going to take as much data as we possibly can. And the idea is, and I've got several experts that have been working literally half their lives on this, that, oh boy, this is really going to get woo-woo, and I'm trying not to, but.
Oh, it's Camelot. Go right ahead.
Well, over half the population of the Earth is a witness to UFOs. we don't believe in them anymore. Now we know. Everybody
Right.
knows. Everybody knows. The question is, where do they go when they're not, flying over your neighborhood or over New York City in broad daylight when no one will go up there and see them? And the consensus keeps coming back, well, they go where no one else is. And the only place where no one else is that we know for sure is this area of the ocean, because no one has ever sailed this water. These two ships haven't been there, and they're the only two ships that can make it there that are civilian. If the government's gone or some militaries have gone, it would be, I doubt they could give us any information, because these are Russian international waters. These are Russian national waters. So if we've been sailing them with our submarines, we can't admit it. We're not going to give out any information. So this is the first civilian trip ever, since the Earth cooled, to this area. If there are UFOs or UFO cities or alien cities or ancient cities parked on the bottom of the sea, this is the most logical place for them to be. Yes, it's 4,400 meters of icy water. But the interesting thing is there is life that goes there in the winter to nest. The Ross gull goes there in the winter to nest. And I spoke to the leading ornithologist in the world, who's in Norway, and nobody knows where this little gull goes for the winter. It can't stand the cold. It's a fairly warm weather bird, and yet it nests in the north somewhere, and no one's ever tracked it. My ancestor,
that's very interesting.
James Ross, named it. That's why it's called the Ross gull.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. I just happened to remember that Valery Uvarov also said that Russians have a special interest in that area of the world. They believe that there's some hidden, I don't know, very incredible relics that tell about the the early humanity, human beginnings on planet Earth, et cetera, et cetera. So they are kind of, they've been sending other expeditions in that, at least in the direction where you're going, maybe not all the way up there.
Well, one of your chat room people asked the question a while back, how did I ever get involved with this? And I said, well, I was doing research for the second volume of the Art of Millions of Years series, which is a 2,000-page series on 2012 and everything that's going to happen and has happened. And I was in Tibet, and we discovered that they have this idea that the Earth is hollow, that life came out of the Earth or retreated into the Earth, or somehow their whole Tibetan Buddhism is tied to the inner Earth. And I spent 14 days there trying to get to the root of it, and I couldn't because they hadn't been there except through mental channeling. And so I said, well, I'll go see if there's some information on it. And certainly somebody has sailed up there. Somebody's got some data. Nobody had it. I said, you got to be kidding. No one's ever gone up there to see? And so I started doing some research, and I found Stephen Curry, who was the original expedition leader in 2005. And I joined the team. I was actually on the gyroscope team to measure the curvature of the Earth. And the summer of 2006, tragically, very suddenly, Stephen Curry passed away with rapid onset brain cancer, and I was nominated to be the expedition leader. Well, that was like being handed the big end of the bat and told to go to the plate and hit a home run. I was so not tooled up to handle this. So it took me a couple of years to get the team together, to get it reorganized, to get some decent funding together. I put in, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000 to get it going, and got some trips done and some initial pilot films done. And here it is. We've got this full-blown expedition that History, Discovery, Nat Geo, Science Channel, everybody is waiting for this.
Well, that's so cool. I want to say that I don't know if you're familiar with Peter Moon or with his new book, which is called, well, it's relatively new anyway, Transylvanian Sunrise. And it is actually more or less an English translation of a book written by a guy named Radu Sinemar, who is someone who's from Romania. And it's all about a find near the Romanian Sphinx in the mountains of Romania. And I don't know, have you heard anything about this?
No, this is new to me. I'm all ears. Keep going.
Okay, yeah, because this, in a funny way, it may relate to what you're talking about, I have to tell you. And maybe you're going to need to talk to actually Radu Sinamar, or this specific person that is his kind of mentor. So it's a whole saga, and the book is well worth reading, the English book, and I've got an ad for it on my site, and it's, you know, I can give you the information how to get to Peter Moon. Peter Moon is the publisher. He is the publisher of the Montauk books. But he was contacted by this Romanian who had read the Montauk books and who had contact with a person who was in charge of what was in essence kind of a secret, I believe it's called the Foundation X or something, I forget what it's called, in Romania. And it's sort of like the Area 51 or the top secret, you know, whatever you want to call that area. And this particular man who goes by the name of Caesar, and I don't think that's his real name, but that's the name they give him in the book. He grows up and he has one of these umbilical cords that's extremely, well, they say it's very big and it had to be sawed with a saw. And because of that, he was tracked during his childhood, and because you know, children with special umbilical cords have special, you know, powers, so to speak. And so, sure enough, he had lots of precog kinds of powers, you know, ESP and so on. And so they actually brought him to live. They took him away from his parents when he was around 12, and then brought him to live at this base, this secret underground base type place, where he was sort of brought up within this think tank, if you will. And then he eventually became the leader of it, the head of it. And but he's a very spiritual man, and had very interesting contacts, let's say. So this whole story he told to this guy named Radu Sinamar, who is also a Romanian, and then told Radu to write it into a book, which Radu did. Now, what happened was they did discover this installation near the area of what's called the Romanian Sphinx in these mountains, in the Carpathian Mountains. And what happened was there is a similar installation that was found in Iraq that was guarded by U.S. military. And the U.S. military, the machine underground in Iraq, and this had a lot to do with why they went into Iraq in the first place, by the way, but it was clearly built by some beings who were much taller than human, because it's comprised of these tables that are very, very tall tabletops, and in order to see the top of the table, humans actually have to be on a stool, you know, a foot stool. And so it was clearly tall beings, and it seems to be something of an Akashic record, or it's a hall of records that's kind of like a hologram, that you touch the top of the table in a certain area. It can read your DNA, it can read your whole, you know, physical history, or it can go back in time or forward in time, so on and so forth. So this is what, so apparently the U.S. military made a deal with the Romanian government, because the Romanian government needed the help of the U.S. military to actually dig into the mountain to get to this installation. They saw it on ground penetrating radar, but they were unable to get to it because it was surrounded by rock. And the U.S. military has been building underground bases. As you know, they have special equipment that can basically liquefy, you know, the underground and create these bases quite quickly. And so they did a deal with them, and it became guarded by like an Area 51 type of place now in Romania, which is guarded to this day. And then it had a force field, and no one could. 3 people died trying to access this actual, you know, to get into the cave area where the installation is. And this is all in the book. And I'm sorry to go on about this, but I have a reason for doing this, because you need to know about this. So what happened was this guy, Caesar, had the only frequency that was high enough to be able to reach in and open the door. and he did so, and then the military was able to gain access, and I guess the rest, as they say, is history. But we don't know anything much more about it other than what I've just related, and that's a very short rendition of a very intricate and very fascinating exploration that leads to this. But what has happened since then, and I just had Peter Moon on my show, and Peter Moon's now subsequently been making trips to and from Romania, and he's also been involving this guy named David Anderson, who's head of the Time Travel Research Organization that has its headquarters now in Romania, that also is affiliated with the U.S. government and black projects and so on. He used to be on Long Island, from what I understand. Anyway, what happened is Caesar had subsequently left. He put Radu Cinemar in charge of this secret, Romanian government thing, and he disappeared because he had made contact with some beings that came from inner Earth in this installation. And apparently he disappeared. He just disappeared. And the word from Peter Moon was that Radu Cinemar was very, sort of saddened by his disappearance, and that he had tried to make contact with him and find out where he went, and all he knew is that he went into inner Earth. I just thought that you'd like to know.
Wow, that's interesting. I was so ready to sign up for a tour. I want to go see this place. I've never heard of it.
Well, actually, Peter Moon now gives tours at least to the Romanian Sphinx area. You can't, obviously the installation, they don't let you in, right? It's a above top secret installation at this point, surrounded by fences and all this kind of thing. But the yogis in the area and other remote viewers have gone there with their minds, and I also tapped into it myself, to having done some remote viewing. And I believe you've done some remote viewing as well, haven't you?
I've taken remote viewing classes. I use it as a validation, but I got to tell you, I'm a scientist. I got to have proof. Got to have a rock. Got to have a teaspoon of something. And that's what I tell the team. Look, all this remote viewing is wonderful. I see that it has its uses, but we're going to physically haul ourselves and 100 of top people up there. If we have to be throwing up all the way, we're going to get there. We're going to take water samples, air samples, microbe samples, core samples off the bottom. We're going to take under ice photography, magnetic samples. We're going to measure the curvature of the Earth. If this opening is there, one way or another, we're going to discover it. If it's not there, we'll discover that too.
Okay, well, all of us will look forward to hearing more about this, and hopefully you will get to do this exposition in July of 2013, all things being equal on planet Earth at that time, which is kind of a crapshoot at the moment, from what I understand.
Keep it off balance, don't we?
Well, who knows where it's all going, but it is a fascinating subject, and I have no doubt that there are also forces that are probably going to try to mess with your situation. But you've got some great support there, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, the Russians are all over it, and it's their water. So if somebody else wants to get in that water, I couldn't even get the Norwegians. I wanted to take a bigger boat. The Norwegians wouldn't do it either. Nope.
Interesting.
So the Russians.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, they're one of the first people that got into the whole sort of psychic information, following all of that out in the early days, remote viewing as well. So they were some of the, supposedly, according to the story, at least the cover story, there were some of the reason that the U.S. military ever got into the remote viewing and Project Stargate and all that.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, so here we got the Russians again taking the first step. Okay, well, so at this moment, let's see, somebody is asking, we do have people on a chat room, and we have people that want to be asking questions during the show, so if you don't mind, I'm going to from time to time answer or ask you a question that comes up here. Is that okay?
Sure, fine.
Okay. Somebody is asking, have you ever heard of map collection?
Yes, it's
presented by Harry Hubbard.
It's in the second volume of the Arc of Millions of Years. We cover that, and it's interesting because the thing that we wonder about is how did he get his information? We don't really know how these things lay out on ley lines and energy lines and what they're going to look like after this ice age that's coming. So the Hubbard maps are a piece of evidence we couldn't throw out. Is too good. And I don't put the channeling information in the book because I can't corroborate it. But the legends, the things that are carved in stone, the things that people draw, we put it in the book because, it's 2,000 pages and it's supposed to be comprehensive, and it's not our job to throw data out. So we put it in and we try to relate it and cross-reference it as best we can and let the reader decide.
Okay, well, cool. All right, and so I guess I'm just kind of going down this kind of list with you to cover the things that I wanted to be updated on, and I really appreciate the update on the North Pole Inner Earth expedition. And is there any other, before we change gears here, is there anything else you want to add about that we should know about, or maybe,
Well, just stay tuned. Always check up on the website. It's NPIE.org, NPIEE.org. We'll make updates to that as often as we get information. That is the website that'll have the live streams on them. We'll be having 4 channels streaming live for 15 days during the expedition. So if you're one of the 6,000 or 7,000 people that have sent us applications for those 100 seats on that boat, you stand a chance, but not a real good chance of getting on the ship. But you can be there with us by watching the stream, and hopefully that's the way most people will join us. We ran a pilot film in Japan, and we had 17 million viewers, pulled a 9.5 share on Nippon Television Network, which is like better than American Idol. Lots and lots of people interested in this expedition.
Yeah, that's so cool. Because I know that you stuck with this for a long time, and it's just wonderful that you actually are, that the whole thing's coming off now. So I'm very happy for you.
It's the only thing I'm doing. So every week we do something on the expedition because I'm just so passionate about it. But obviously, we have our day jobs and we build real things. We build electric cars, and that's our primary job, and it makes us a fair amount of money, and so we're able to do these things that are just passionate projects. This is one of them.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm real glad to hear that this is progressing. So the next, I guess what you wanted to talk about, and I did sort of skim through your new book, Alienated Nation. I believe that's the title. And so do you want to introduce that book and maybe talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, some people ask me, what's a scientist doing writing a book about government? Well, one of the, I guess, necessary evils that we have to negotiate when you're putting together a company that's introducing a new automobile to the American highway, and I've done it lots of times for the major car makers, the Altima, the Cadillac, Solstice, it's out there. But those were for big companies. Now we're an independent company trying to do it on our own, and we have to go through all the government hoops, all the little tunnels and secret behind-the-scenes stuff that you have to do in the government, and a lot of it's political, and some of it isn't. And I discovered that the shadow government in our country is really the agency government. It's all the agencies, departments, bureaus, administrations, and they are set up to keep small business from ever getting a start in this country. They're dedicated to preserving and protecting billion-dollar multinational corporations. So I became, as a scientist, very interested in gathering up the data. When I got enough data, I decided, because I'm a solutions person, Lord knows, Kerry, there's enough doom and gloom books out there to build a house. And they cover Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the late-night talk shows and daytime news shows, and we're sick of it. We're sick of the sledgehammers and the slander and the crisis this and just all of the corruption. So I'm a solutions person. That's how I make my living. I walk into chaos and try to figure out a way to make it function and make it work. And if I can, then the company will be successful. I want to do that with the republic that we live in. And so I searched for a solution, and I found it. And not many people know this, but there are 40 states in our country that have passed sovereignty acts, just like pre-Civil War. I mean sovereignty acts, declaring their sovereignty from the United States of America. And it's designed to pick a legal fight, which I don't think any one of them individually is ready for. But as a group, they now have enough ratifying power to have a constitutional convention. And that's what I wrote the book about. This is a call to action for those 40 states to conduct an Athenian constitutional convention and fix this republic and undo this agency government that has been choking us to death since 1932.
Okay, now is this the same thing as an Article 5 convention?
It is. An Article 5 provides a way for the Constitution to be amended. Okay, but normally, and this has only happened a few times, there's only been 27 amendments, and 10 of them were with the original Constitution. So it's only been amended 17 times in all the years that it's been there. It is a process that doesn't have any structure. That's why the last one that we had, the big one we had, Madison arrived before anyone else and created a structure that would, when the delegates arrived, they just followed it because Madison had it organized. Now we're pushing this from a different direction. This is not being pushed by the federal government. This is being pushed by the states. They took the initiative. They spent years debating this in their individual legislatures, and they passed these sovereignty acts, and they are now ready. And what they need is a structure. So this takes off on Article 5, but it provides a structure by which these 40 states can declare a constitutional convention, repeal 3 amendments, and pass 7. And if they will do that, we can save this republic.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. You know, I had a guy on my show who was really advocating this Article 5 convention, which he said the people could call, or certain delegates could call, or whatever, if they elected them. But it sounded to some degree as if, because it needed Congress to actually call for it. Now, I'm wondering if you, in your case, okay, this is Kerry Cassidy, Project Camelot, Whistleblower Radio, and we're talking to Brooks Agnew. And right before the break, we were talking about your new book, Alienated Nation, and, well, the states having the wherewithal to call it constitutional convention. Do you think, and because they filed or somehow sovereignty acts, how did they go about doing that? This is not related, I take it, to the Drake. And I don't know if you know who Drake is, but somebody who's saying that they, you know, that states have gone to The Hague and filed something. You're not referring to that, are you?
No. This is where the legislatures meet, and they draft a sovereignty act which declares their state sovereignty in the United States. That is to say, they declare in this act, in most of them, Utah is a very powerful one, Tennessee, Texas, Arkansas, a lot of states have filed these, and I include several of them in the book because when you read the language of these acts, you're going to go, wow, this is really picking a fight with the federal government. They're saying that they will not enforce federal mandates unless their state legislature ratifies the mandate. Now, that is what we used to call a nullification act prior to the Civil War, and it led to the secession of 13 states from the federal government. Now there are 40 states. That's more than a 2/3 majority. So,
yeah, that's cool. Well, why isn't anyone else talking about this? I mean, is this a big secret? I mean, what's the story with that?
Well, they will be talking about it. When I publish this book, it's each chapter in this book started driving the national headlines like a precision hammer. When it made #1 on Amazon, it was unbelievable how the mainstream media picked this up and started covering what I include in this book. It is a huge deal now, and it is gaining momentum.
Okay, well, you go over a lot of different things, it seems to me, in the book, and it's kind of a wide gamut. The actual part, as far as I could tell, about the Constitutional Convention doesn't really come until near the end.
That's correct.
So you're setting the stage, in essence.
Right. What people don't realize is that our nation has become alienated in a lot of ways. We are alienating from our own children. That's why I have this chapter called The Silent Scream, where we have a concentrated, federally funded program, billions of dollars a year, spent every year since World War II, since before World War II, to systematically kill off by death certain classes and types of humans in our society. And the facts are there. I lay them out. I'm not pulling any punches. People can read it. They can believe it or not believe it, but the facts are absolutely true. And when you see the courageous people that have tried to stand up against this organization and say, stop, at least we're not going to fund it anymore, within 24 hours they are excoriated, and within 72 hours they quit. Even though they're working in the job of their life, they love what they do, they're dedicated to what they do, they're saving people's lives, they disappear. I mean, gone. It is horrible what's going on in that respect. I talk about the education system. I talk about several acts that Congress has been trying to pass for quite a while and can't seem to even get to the floor. Once you read the acts, you will go, man, I cannot believe how divided this country is. It is alienated from itself. The states have become alienated from the federal government. The federal government has stopped governing, and it is now ruling, and it was never meant to rule.
Well, I'll agree to that. Of course, because I come from, the talking to whistleblowers from above top secret backgrounds, some of this that you talk about sounds, a bit, let's say, on the superficial side, although, the heart's in the right place, I would say. So in terms of the states, let's just take that, for example, the sovereignty issue. What would it take for those states to actually sort of bound together? Are you saying it's going to take your book and you think your book will do the job, or is there something, in other words, is there something that can prevent them and has prevented them thus far? Because my understanding is that there is a lot of corruption in the state governments as well.
Not necessarily, because state governments are more local. It's more close to the ground. The people can get to you with their pitchforks a lot easier on the state level. And when you look at the fights that these legislatures have had to pass these sovereignty acts, they've been protracted. Some of them have lasted for 10 years. And it's taken a while for the states to actually say, okay, that's enough. Enough of this federal government. We're done with it. And they then get together and cross party lines, and they make it happen. Great.
Okay, so it has happened. They passed these things, but then from what I understand, they're just sitting there, right?
Yes, because great things happen from small catalysts. The day that I published this book, I called some of the campaigns, and I told them about my Control-Alt-Delete idea, the idea of rescinding all regulations by all agencies written after December 31st, 2007, and then requiring a 2/3 majority of Congress to pass any new regulations. 600 regulations a month have hit the books since December 31st, 2007. Nobody can keep up with that. Nobody. It's killing our country. It stopped the wheels of commerce globally. And the next day, Mitt Romney went to the podium and said, the day that I'm elected, I will repeal all Obama-era regulations. This book is having its effect.
Okay, well, the trouble is that Mitt Romney is a highly suspect individual. So him saying that, about his opponent is, I don't know. First of all, it may be somewhat naive because from what I understand, it's not really Obama who's put those regulations in place. He simply is the puppet anyway. And so, I don't know. Politicians say a lot of things on the way in, but actually doing them is a whole nother matter, as many have seen over and over again once they get elected. So what, just in terms of, and I appreciate that there may be a sort of a trigger effect. Certainly, and I do believe individuals can have a real impact. But I am curious what you think is going to be sort of the final straw that will make these states sort of stand up.
Well, I don't know what the final straw will be, but I can tell you from my experience with energy and with contagion and with trying to convince large companies with tens of thousands of employees to do things differently and make changes in their organizations, that we're close. These 40 states are talking to one another. They are communicating. It will only take a catalyst, some kind of, maybe it's the book, maybe it's me out there talking about it, maybe it's someone else talking about it. But to get those 40 states to meet together and to appoint an Athenian delegation, one delegate per state with a fixed, agreed-upon agenda, no falderall, no free-for-all. This is not going to look like Tahrir Square. 40 people go into a room, they all raise their hand and say aye, 3 amendments repealed, 7 amendments passed, and the Republic is saved.
Okay, when you say the Republic is saved, what do you mean exactly by that?
Well, you have to talk about what's being taken apart and what's being put back together.
So, the 7 amendments, the 3 that are repealed and the 7 that are put in place, you want to go through them?
Sure. The 3 that are repealed, the very first one is the 16th Amendment, the federal income tax, the power given to federal government by this amendment to lay taxes against incomes and profit. That's repealed. It's gone. It is replaced by one of the 7 amendments allowing a federal sales tax, a point-of-sale tax, just like it's outlined in the Constitution. It goes on everything, food, gas, everything. Everybody pays. People that work for cash, tourists, illegal aliens, rich people, everybody pays. And it results in a windfall of revenue because there's no loopholes. You can make all the money you want, but when you spend it, you're going to pay the tax. Doing away with the corporate income tax will increase corporate profits hugely, which means they'll spend more money, which means they'll pay more taxes. It's a revolutionary idea, and Congress will never do it because they lose control over the classes. If they lose control over the classes, they lose their professional voters. I have a whole chapter called The Professional Voter. These are people that are literally paid to vote, and over half the country now receives some kind of federal check. That's just wrong. So the other amendment that goes away is the one that deals with the election and payment of Congress and the election and payment of the Senate. Congressional terms are increased to 4 years from 2 years. They serve 3 terms and go home. The Senate serves 3 terms and goes home. That's the changes. The Congress is now no longer in perpetual campaign mode. Having to run every 2 years is like having to run every 2 weeks. That's why Congress gets nothing done. They're only concerned with reelecting themselves. With this amendment, Congress only has to worry about getting reelected twice. That's it. Now they can get some work done. It's a long time coming. It needs to be put in place, and it has to be done by amendment. The other one's called the National Guard Amendment. This gives governors complete control over their National Guards. It removes the control of the president to sequester National Guards without an official declaration of war. That means we don't have more soldiers killing themselves through suicide than we have dying in the battlefield, because all they wanted to do was serve 2 weekends a month and 2 weeks in the summer, and nobody wanted to go kill anybody or have their legs blown off. They wanted to help with hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes and fires and disasters. That's what they signed up to do. That was the advertising program that got them in the program in the first place. They never wanted to parachute into a desert and start shooting people. It's driving our country crazy. These are the kinds of amendments that will save this republic. No more unscripted wars, unless the president wants to hire his own army.
Okay. Well, those sound very logical and like good ideas. I have to say they echo to some degree my conversation a bit with former Congressman Jim Traficant, and I encourage you to watch my interview with him. I think you'll get a kick out of it. He actually talks about some of that stuff. He was do you know who he is?
Oh, yeah, I know Jim. I used to, when he would say, "Beat me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life here."
Okay. He didn't say that to me, so that's
no,
pretty
you
funny.
said that on the floor of the Congress almost every time you spoke.
Oh, really? Okay. Very interesting. All right. Well, so what you said then, so some of these things you've already talked about and they would be put in place. There's some others that you haven't talked about. Do you want to go through the rest of them, or do you want to sort of change gears and maybe talk a little in some other direction?
Wherever you want to go, Kerry. I mean,
I want people to understand what it is that your book is advocating, so to speak, and so that they can see whether or not it really has legs, like if it's realistic under the circumstances. I mean, you do know that the world is run by by a cabal, right?
Well, it's run by banks.
I'm sorry?
It's run by banks. I mean, it has been since 1932, since Hoover let Dawes and Young into Congress to begin setting up the war debt for Germany in 1928. I mean, everyone knows this. The banks got into the system, right, and they loaned money to both sides and kept us at war for 50 years, fighting one another. I have a chapter called Wars Are Us in the book, and it goes into this in huge amounts of detail. I don't want to make it into a conspiracy theory book, and I have lots of friends in the Pentagon, but it's not necessarily the Pentagon. I'm talking about the folks down at Wars Are Us. They know how to deal with any kind of conflict, but they don't know how to deal with peace. It puts them out of business.
Sure. So the question I have for you is why you think that the powers that be, so to speak, are going to allow this to fly in some form or fashion. I mean, in other words, where do you think that the groundswell is going to come up, and how do you think it's going to be overtaken?
I love that question, because very recently the Bilderbergs met in Chantilly, Virginia. And I was in very close communication with Alex when he was on the line up there trying to get everybody excited about it. And he did get about 1,000 people up there, and it disrupted some stuff. But one of the things I discovered after following it a little more closely this year than I did 4 years ago in 2008 when they caused Hillary Clinton to drop out of the race and let Barack Obama slide in and beat milquetoast McCain, is that the Bilderbergs are very frustrated. They're frustrated because no matter how they manipulate their trillions of dollars, no matter who they put into office, they're losing control of us. And it's because of the awakeness that there are pockets of all around the world. Your program, other programs out there, people are listening. People are awakening, and they're awake people cannot be controlled that way. They can't be herded like sheep. Now, the vast majority can, yes, but it's getting to critical mass, and they know it. They know their money is about to slip out of their hands.
Well, all right. I hear what you're saying, and certainly there is a lot of efforts, and I don't know. Do you follow the white hats who write the, it's called T-Blogs, Dark Cabal, Blogspot.com, something like that?
No.
You familiar with that website at all? Okay, well, they release communiques, and they've been investigating, they've been following the money, so to speak. And so they release detailed communiques about where the money is going, who's spending it, and on what, and sort of the graft and what has been going on with trading programs. You familiar with trading programs?
Oh my gosh, yeah, trading. Currency trading has been strong since World War II. It's money from heaven for these guys. That's how George Soros made all his money and broke the Bank of Britain, Bank of England. It's happening. These guys have computer programs that make all these micro trades every month. Jim Dimon, the other day when he was testifying in Congress, let it slip. I could not believe they didn't jump on this. Of course, he lost $2 billion of his depositors' money, and they were trying to make a big deal out of that. And Jim was outclassed them all, wearing his Obama cufflinks and everything. And he said, well, we have $2.3 trillion of depositors' money on hand. And he went on with his conversation. And I went, what? What? You let that slide? $2.3 trillion of depositors' cash on hand means the money's not working. It isn't meeting the credit needs of the community. They're trading it. They're using it to trade back and forth with currencies. They're playing money games with it. And they've digested the currency down to 3 or 4 main currencies that they're working with. And they're trying to break the euro so they can take complete control of Europe. They've got it $70 trillion in debt, and there is not enough production to pay it off. They're going to own it all for pennies on the dollar.
Okay, well, yes, no doubt about it. Where it's going to go, though, I mean, the bottom line is most people that I'm in contact would say that the plan is to take down the financial system so that they can put into place their new world order system. And that's what they want. They want the European countries to basically, call uncle, so to speak, and ask for a centralized bank, a centralized treasury,
and that's
for the entire planet.
And the founding fathers, well, not all of them, most of them were against centralized banking because they knew what happened. They watched Britain do it already, and they faced it for 100 years. So when this country was formed and the founding fathers said, we're not going to have a central bank, and Hamilton was for it and Jefferson was against it, and they argued it through the Federalist Papers, and Jefferson won. And that's what kept our country free for a long time. But slowly but surely, in 1932, we had, 5,500 banks close, and then they had a bank holiday, and then they reorganized the banks, and then the Fed was assigned with the U.S. chairman and has had a U.S. chairman ever since. And what's happened is they took us off the gold standard, took us off the silver standard, and the entire alchemical process is almost complete. They've almost got us off paper and completely on zeros and ones, something completely worthless that has no basis in value whatsoever. It's all
right. And I noticed in your book that you actually seem to advocate the silver standard, but you don't seem to advocate the gold standard. Do you want to talk about why?
Because there's not enough gold in the world to put us on a standard like that. And it doesn't need to be tied to a base metal anyway. It needs to be tied to the value that people bring to the table. That's why this national sales tax works, because it's tied to the gross domestic product. It's not tied to anybody's personal net worth, where you once a year have to incriminate yourself by filling out all that silly paperwork and then hoping that the IRS police don't show up. That's the whole idea behind it.
Okay. Well, my information says that there is actually a lot more gold than people realize here on planet Earth, and that we are nowhere near running out of it even, and that a lot of it's being taken off planet, as it always was. You have anything to say about that?
Well, I agree that metal has been taken off planet. There's definitely evidence of ancient mining, advanced mining that goes way beyond anything the ancients had. And, the idea that gold to be taken off planet seems kind of ridiculous, because you'd think advanced races can do nanotechnology and make all the gold they want. It's just protons and neutrons, people. But I just can't believe that there are international gold miners like the Anunnaki out there saving their atmosphere with gold. And, you know, much respect to Zacharias for his wonderful books. But
right. Well, I agree with you in terms of the atmosphere. I actually don't think that's what they use it for. My understanding is, first of all, the monatomic gold, they use that for longevity. So they ingest it. And the other thing is, from what I understand, making gold and the actual gold that you mine and get out of the earth are not the two. You don't end up with the same thing.
yeah, I imagine not, of course, because the protons are different weights, different ages, different average.
So there is something special, is what I'm saying, about the gold on Earth, and it's also used in things like UFOs and other, I guess, finer kinds of more technical devices that we may not even be able to imagine at this point. But it has multiple uses.
What I'm advocating, or at least imagining, is a system that isn't based on that at all. It isn't based on wealth. It isn't based on anything like that. There's no rich and poor. Is just
sure.
that adds value to its own system of living. I'm not saying communal. I'm not saying you can sit around and do nothing and survive. We humans have a drive that is unlike any other creature that I know, that I can imagine. We compete with ourselves and with one another. We're explorers. We're not couch potatoes. I mean, even if we are couch potatoes, we like to watch racing. We like to watch fighting and games. We like to watch competitions, and we ingest, large amounts of beer watching it. It is in our psyche. I think it's in our eternal being that we're like that. We got sidetracked and fat, and it's the whole economy of this world is set up wrong.
Well, I agree with that for sure. Okay, what I'm going to do here is we have approximately a half hour left, and pretty soon we're going to have a short break. But in the meantime, I also want to allow people to ask their own questions. And like I said, I'm going to go to the chat room, and I'm also going to open it up for callers. I believe on the freedomslips.com website, people can call in, and actually they will relay the calls to us here. So go ahead and open the lines, and let's take calls, and I'll just skim quickly through the chat here and see if we can find some questions that may not have been answered previously, because I don't want to just ignore them. This one kind of sounds self-explanatory, but just to go through it, someone's saying, when you say Israel, you mean the Zionist Rothschild creation. Can you be more specific about Israel? You're talking about the Zionist state, ?
Yeah, I'm talking about the Zionist state. I'm talking about the country of Israel. Israel and Israeli inventors are at the core of most of the technology that drives us right now. The iPhone, email, the microchip for computers, Intel, all of that is driven by their money, their intellect, their ability to get the right companies funded at the right times and capture that intellectual property. And, anyone in business knows this, that if you send a finished product to Israel, it's the last one you will ever sell them, because they'll build it on their own. That's just the way they are. And I'm not being racist or anti-Zionist or anti-Semitic in any way. I'm just telling you that they are going to protect their country at all costs. And if they saw the threat of Iran or anyone else building a reactor that would get enriched uranium in the hands of their enemies, they're going to take them out. And that's why they use every weapon they can. And believe me, every square inch of dirt is watched between Israel and the surrounding states. And they can't just attack people. They can't just march a tank or a plane or an army over and attack people. But they can do it through cyber warfare. They invented it. And
well, yes, and they can also do it through, I totally agree with Jim Stone on this, what's basically nuclear blackmail. And there's mounting evidence that that Stuxnet is positioned in reactors also in the U.S. and other countries, and that all they have to do is sort of make a phone call, and they've got a substantial amount of weight behind whatever they ask for. That's some heavy duty leverage.
It is. You know, one of the oldest nuclear power plants in this country. It has been modified and upgraded more times than any other plant. I actually visited it.
All right. Well, that was a short break, and I appreciate it. Okay. So, Brooks, I want to know what reactor you're talking about.
That was San Onofre in Southern California.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's interesting. So what are you saying that that's the oldest plant?
Well, it's one of the oldest nuclear power plants in the nation. And
Really?
it has been modified. Yeah, it was operating in the mid-'60s. It has been modified more times. It's been upgraded more times. It sits right in a very upscale neighborhood, and it's very important that it produces electricity for that grid. And so it gets the Cadillac parts. And it's so strange that they lost control of their cooling valves. And
and they down. They're not going to reopen it.
That's correct. That's correct.
And I've actually, I've driven by there, and I got, some back channel information during that time when this was happening. Actually started in January is when it started. And then eventually the word came down, and it was in the paper. And of course, those people in the surrounding area are highly suspicious and very unhappy about what that portends. Might you have something to say about that?
Well, it sure smells like Stuxnet to me. And, in true muscle flexing style, the White House has just released that we have a new virus called the flame virus. I don't know anything about this virus. I didn't even know the name existed. That is so top secret. I cannot believe that this is coming out of our White House. It's killing me.
Why? Well, I don't understand. Why is it killing you that something like that would come out of our White House?
Well, because it seems like the people that develop these weapons or these systems to try to defeat nefarious forces around the world are risking their lives to write it, to get it into place, to implement it, to make sure that it's monitored, that it's effective. And for our leadership to be saying, oh yeah, we have the flame virus and we've put it here and we've put it there. The people that are involved in that are dead. Those people, I mean, we are no longer fighting a war with soldiers and armies. This is a war of assassins, and it goes both ways.
Okay, I pulled up an article right away on this flame virus, which I hadn't heard of either, and it basically says that it can sabotage computer systems, was likely used to attack Iran in April, according to the leading security company Symantec.
You know who's just, don't you? That's Norton antivirus.
Really?
Yes. Symantec is Norton.
Yeah. Okay. And that's the biggest. That's like the biggest, right?
Well, yes. And a lot of people complain about Norton because they write the viruses and then they write the antivirus software. So they sort of do cyber blackmail. And it's a real task to get Norton off your computer once it's on. It is the virus.
That's interesting. Well, it says that, this is a quote from, I guess, Vikram Thakur, who is a Symantec researcher, and he says, these guys have the capability to delete everything on a computer. This is not something that is theoretical. It is absolutely there. That's a quote.
And
Kerry,
right before it came out, yes?
We've been joined by 416.
Okay, so we've got a caller holding, is what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I saw that, and I thought you were talking that 416 people joined. I didn't know what that was about. All right, that's fine. So, caller, are you on the line with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, how you doing? You're on the line with Kerry Cassidy and Brooks Agnew.
Hey, Kerry. Hey, Brooks.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I love Kerry's program. This is so exciting. I haven't had a sip of water. I'm so excited.
Well, you seem to have a very good ability to keep your emotions in check when dealing with Kerry, and that's no easy feat, I think. And that's not to slight Kerry in any way, but I know that you're both very passionate people and you have very passionate viewpoints. But anyway, to just skip forward to my questions and comments, we're 2 months coming up to your expedition to the Arctic Circle. Am I correct?
14 months. Next year, 2013.
Oh, pardon me. Well, what I wanted to know is in your own personal development, because I was listening to your interview on Red Ice Radio, and you seem to posit the possibility or the potential that if you present yourself in such a way, and this is me going to maybe to the hypothesis or the speculation that perhaps the inner Earth is inhabited, that if you have a good reason, and if you have good people presenting yourselves in such a way, that maybe whoever is down there will present themselves to us, as has been said in the past. And I did read some of your comments that you believe that Richard Byrd's, or pardon me, Admiral Byrd, it was George Byrd, that his diaries were concocted, or he didn't seem to resonate with his material. But the question is this: how have you overcome your own not emotions, I know that you're a scientist, but your own challenges? Like, what have been some of the things in your own life, seeing as how you've gotten to this point in your life? How have you overcome some of the many challenges I assume that you have, and gotten to the point where now you're on the brink of, a very important discovery possibly? How have you kept grounded, and how do you plan on staying the course and keeping grounded while perhaps venturing off into one of the most significant discoveries that could be coming in the next little while?
Well, that's a really good question. For most people, you need some kind of anchor they can hold on to. Some people hold on to, Jesus Christ, or they hold on to their belief in some kind of dogma that for them doesn't move. What I discovered about 6 years ago, or should I say remembered about 6 years ago, was more memory and more experience than one lifetime can bring. In other words, I remember things from lives before this. And it gave me an eternal perspective that keeps me on course. And I, as a young person, I would start lots of stuff and never finish anything. And I found myself in my mid-30s not very successful with a house full of kids. And I did some soul searching, some deep meditation, and I decided in my mid-30s that I was going to start finishing things. So I went back to college at age 34, and I finished. And then I finished the next degree and the next degree, and I started writing books, and I finished those, and I built 2 plants, and I finished those. And the act of staying with it until it's done became part of my being. And so when I took on the expedition, I decided I was not going to be blown to and fro by every wind of doctrine. I was not going to be called a quack or a crazy hollow earth guy. I was going to stick to the science, and I was going to follow the protocol that the board had set, and I would not throw out any data. And when it came to, like you said, preparing myself and doing those kinds of trainings and meditations, I became proficient at Flower of Life meditation with Drunvilla Melchizedek. I did so specifically so that I could resonate with the assertion that there's some kind of dimensional gate or a galactic gate that needs to be opened with consciousness when you get above the Arctic Circle. I wasn't going to throw out the data, and I wanted to be prepared to make that happen. And so I took 3 years to go that path and learn those things. And that's how I stay grounded. That's how things don't shake me. I really wrestle with my ego every day, just like everybody else does. But I try to keep it in check and realize that it's not about me. It's about getting this done and connecting the people of the earth with the earth again.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a great answer, Brooks. And we actually talked about that in one of my prior shows with you. And caller, thank you for the question.
And by the way, I'm going to cover this in great detail at the Pythagoras conference in October in Southern Indiana. So if you want $100 off that, go to xsquaredradio.com, click on the blue banner, and you can join there.
And I'm speaking there as well. So if you want a little competition on the $100, you can click on my banner and go there too. But either way, we're going to be both worth seeing. So you know, take your pick.
Imagine the top 50 without you there.
No. So it'll be great to meet you in person.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, we've got. It looks like we've got Sandra Sabatini pitching us on the Pythagoras conference. So she's in the background here, I guess, hoping that we're going to mention her conference, and we have done so. And for those of you who don't follow my events page, please do go on Project Camelot to the events tab and click on it for appearances, and you will see that I will be at the Pythagoras conference. I'm also going to be at the Chemtrail conference in the LA prior to that, and I'll probably be at some other ones as well. I'm also taking a group to Egypt, and Brooks, if you're not doing anything during the month of December, let us know, because we're inviting speakers.
I left Egypt about 2 weeks before it blew up in Tahrir Square, and my apartment overlooks the pyramids right there across the street.
Awesome.
I was sitting on the roof, and I was actually talking to my taxi driver. He's a good guy named Hamdi, and he takes me all these weird places that nobody else goes. And he said, you know, you better be careful out there, because everybody's hungry right now, and our tourism is way, way down, and the people are still hungry, and they see you as an American. They're going to strip you naked. So I left 2 weeks before this happened, and one of my people who had gone over with us stayed, and she actually reported to me later, a month later. She couldn't get out for about 6 or 7 days after it occurred. And she said what they were reporting on the news wasn't anything like what was happening at Tahrir Square. So I got the down and dirty from the curb level, what was going on in Tahrir Square. It was cool.
Yeah, I've heard various things as well. I've heard, I've got some back channel information on that. And it would be interesting to compare notes. I can say that there has been some instigation, obviously, from some questionable places. One thing they did was let the prisoners out of prison to contribute to the rioting.
Oh, yeah, and they did a lot of the looting, and then the cops changed clothes, and they were breaking things and set fires.
I mean,
it was
you know, yeah, Egypt is really, it's beyond the Wild West, I got to say. But you know, they're just a wonderful people, just unbelievably creative and gentle and lovely. When they're not, you know, rioting, they're awesome people.
I don't think they were rioting. I was working on a project for a dahabeah up there, and because, you know, those are the unpowered boats that go up and down the Nile. And I was working on an electric drive for a dahabeah there with one of the owners of the fleets, and that's why I was there, and working with John Riley and Hallie and Greg, just you know, just a great tour group there, and just seeing the tension rise over the months, it really was unsettling to see a country manipulated like that.
Yeah, well, it's still going on, obviously. I can say that I also had, I mean, I've been there several times, and I also got information that, I mean, the heart of the people, they had been rebelling against Mubarak for a very long time. They had to be very careful and clandestine about it, but I can assure you that although there was a lot of manipulation, that they were ready to get rid of that government. And they still, I don't think they're going to sit still for what's coming, because I think they're being manipulated again. And I'm sure that the U.S. is going, trying to keep their foothold. They're going to keep control no matter what. That's going to be the U.S. has basically bought and paid for that country, and they're not going to let them go because of Giza, the Giza Plateau, and all of what is there, as you may know.
Well, it could be the antiquities that keeps us there. I think it's the natural gas reserves, because Egypt is the almost sole supplier of natural gas to Israel. Well,
it's more than antiquities. It's what's under the ground in Egypt, and what it's what the pyramid symbolizes and what it's capable of on the planet. I mean, it's just it's huge. The amount of power there is substantial, to say the least. And then there's also the connection through to other places, ley line connections, and all of this. There's the underground labyrinth that they discovered and haven't been reporting about, and then there's also a machine that's been traced under the ground that has a force field around it. That's another one of those kind of very interesting things that the government is guarding, and so on and so forth. So all of that goes on. These power places around the planet are a lot of them being very activated at this time. It sounds like you've been quite an explorer. So have you gone to other places in the world as well?
Well, I've been to Egypt and Tibet and Nepal and Canada, Mexico. I'm going to the Yucatan in December. Be speaking down there with Power Places on the 21st of December. December 2012 at Ground Zero. It'll be cool. And Shasta and places like that. And I'm a hobbyist, when it comes to this. I do manage to get into strange places and strange predicaments when I go, but I'm totally amateur, at this. I'm not a professional explorer. I work 100 hours a week doing what I'm doing, and I'm good at it, and I'm hope to be successful this year. It's finally going to kick off, and people are going to be able to drive electric. But I still like to get out and go out and explore. So I take a week or two each year and just go out and make a trip of it, and take the right tools and right recording equipment and make the right measurements. And if it really interests me, I'll go back. But there's too much to see.
Absolutely. Well, you've got to live on all different levels, and when you're here on the planet, I think it just keeps you kind of young to do many different things, rather than to sort of be a one note kind of person.
Have you ever been to Trout Lake? You ever been to James Gilliland's place?
Yes, I have.
Oh my gosh, I love that place. I'm going back there. That is. My first UFO I ever saw was there, and I've seen one every year that I go back. I photograph some ship in the sky.
Oh, okay. Well, I see UFOs anytime I want. So all I do is look up. They're very easy to spot. I've seen a lot out here and in California and so on. But at any rate, someone have see different things. I actually saw one just this weekend. I was walking my dog outside the conference at Sacramento UFO conference, and I saw a very strange shaped ship that was quite large, and it was a long distance away, but it was rectangular on the bottom, and it was completely quiet, and it must have been gigantic, and I believe that I could see the outline of two rectangles, one right in front of the other, and you don't see anything flies in the sky that looks like that. And then I assumed that they had to be like a larger outline that I wasn't able to see, that was more like black on black against the black sky, that seemed to be triangular, that encompassed those two rectangles. So anyway, that was interesting. No lights on the vehicle at all. But something at the bottom had to be at least illuminated enough that I saw the shape of the rectangles. So it's something very strange vehicle going extremely fast. there was a regular plane in another part of the sky, going along the sky in just, it was a smaller plane. And this thing was just, I mean, if you could watch the comparison between the speed, was just, there were no comparison. So one went across the sky and the other one did. But anyways.
I'm convinced that UFOs are as present as they want to be. I don't think anybody catches them off guard.
Well, yeah, but it depends, who's driving, in my opinion. So if it's us, humans can be caught off guard. I don't know. I don't think they were paying attention to me. I think this was one of ours, in my opinion. But anyway, okay, so to get back to the task at hand here, we've got some more people that have been raising questions, and again, if you put your questions in all caps in the chat room, I can see them faster. So, I'm still back with this Stuxnet because it sounds like you really have sort of a good handle on that. Do you have any insider connections that told you about Stuxnet, or was this just because you read the newspaper articles and that sort of thing?
I only have some knowledge of that on the inside. My proctor when I was in college was the U.S. representative of the International NRC Nuclear Regulatory Commission that went to Chernobyl to find out what happened. So that's how I became fascinated with the industry and what goes wrong with it and how devastating things can be when they do go wrong. And my area of expertise was instrumental analysis because there's so many different areas that you can specialize in this industry, and mine was instrumental analysis. So precision measurement, recording, monitoring, those kinds of things, and did a lot of projects in that, throughout my career. So when cyber warfare, first started rearing its ugly head, we thought we had the the Y2K thing was kind of a cry wolf thing to try to get us ready for this, but we had no clue how things would be networked together later on. And in 1996, when internet started getting fast enough that households started getting it, and they tied the USGS together to monitor the Earth with earthquakes, they collected data for 10 years and did nothing with it. They just collected it. So when smart people started writing viruses, and I think I first heard about Stuxnet, I'm going to say it was 2008. I didn't read it in the news. I can't remember who sent it to me. But this was leading edge stuff, cyber warfare. We had heard about it in the news, but no one was saying anything. And somebody emailed me some notes and this thing called Stuxnet, and I looked it over and I said, well, because they wanted my opinion, I said, well, if you interrupt the communication between the cooling valves and the reactor, you could melt the reactor down. You could make a terrible nuclear disaster. Why would anybody do that? And the only word that I got back was that Israel was doing it to Iran to keep them from completing their reactors. And Iran got so frustrated with it, they started hiring it out. And that's how Japan got involved. So Stuxnet is a virus that hides itself in the code. And I have some testimony that I put in the book because I just want people to know it. I don't care if it's leaked or not. Testimony in Congress from a programmer who was not hired but was solicited by Florida to write code to flip the vote of voting machines and then hide the code. In other words, delete itself so it couldn't be traced. And he refused to write the code. What he did is he went to Congress and he testified to them that not only could he write the code, but you would never find it if he wrote it. And about 3 weeks later, Scytl, S-C-Y-T-L, it's a company in Europe, bought SOE software. SOE software is the vote tallying software in the United States.
Oh yeah, they're definitely, in fact, I just read they're going to be able to they can do this now around the world.
From Europe. Yeah, they just did it. The purchase took place about 3 weeks before, or 4 weeks before I published the book. And I said, that's it. I'm putting it in there. This is insane. We're going to lose control of our own elections, and no one can trace them.
Well, according to Stu Webb, they've been using satellites to re-engineer the vote for a while now, and he has evidence to that effect. But to get back to the Stuxnet thing, I'm just stumbling on an article as you're speaking saying that there's some shared code between the Flame virus, and Stuxnet, which indicates that the creators work together.
Well,
and that's an article on CNET. So and that would make sense. I mean, when you read code, you can tell. It's like a signature.
Yeah, right. Everybody has a programming style. But you remember you mentioned Symantec. Symantec issued an article that the reason they knew about Stuxnet is they reverse engineered it. And my BS detector went off big time when I heard that, because I know what Norton antivirus is. They're the owners of Norton. I think that they were involved in writing the software. And I think those writers were involved in writing Flame. And I think if Flame is out there, we already know the name of it now. We know what it's designed to do. There's other software that's even more nefarious we don't know about yet.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure of that. And then this gets into the Promise software. I guess you know that saga, right?
No, I don't know what Promise software is. I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, this is the very beginning, and this is what Danny Casolero was on the trail of this. What's called the Trail of the Octopus, and it goes back to. Some early days, and Promise software was stolen from a company that created the software, and it basically became the basis for an AI that's now rampant here on the globe, and probably related to Stuxnet and all of this other stuff. And it eventually was taken over by the Mossad and re-engineered through a back door and sold to the Mossad, and probably Stuxnet comes out of all of that. One of the things that Promise software allows them to do is target. They can actually target weapon systems and populations so that they can infect and aim not only weaponry at like if you had a crowd of people. I was told by a whistleblower, if you have 6 people standing around, they can target 3 of them with the virus or whatever it is through the air, so to speak, and using this Promise software, it's a population. It basically among other things, it goes through and labels, identifies populations, DNA, you name it. Mm. So anyway, it's a whole, it's a very deep rabbit hole, I guess, all of that.